do you have the sign-in information?
It's annoying.
Mr. Ryan, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Nothing for me?
I'm hearing you, Mr. Ryan. This is Dan Najjar. You're coming.
Hi, Mr. Jar. How are you? Are you able to hear me now, sir? Is that David Lee, the court reporter? Can you not hear me, sir? Apparently, Mr.
Huh.
Do you hear Mr. Najjar? I think his audio is.
Yeah. Mr. Lee, can you hear me? Apparently not.
No. What's his phone number? That would be the next question. This is why chat is a useful function for this. I'll have it on for the future. Need to email him.
Hello?
Anna, can you, do we know David Lee's telephone number?
Actually, I have it.
Can you provide that for me, please?
Yes, hold on, let me look for it. It's 602.
Hold on one second.
Nine-
Oh, wait. 505 60. Is it a 505 area
No,
code?
that's a different area code. 602 999 1131.
Let me see if he answers. He's having a difficult time hearing. He says he can't hear me, but he can't hear Mr. Najjar either.
Mr. Ryan, this is David Lee.
Mr. Lee, can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Yes. Could you answer your phone?
Yes.
You're.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Lee. Are you able? You couldn't hear Mr. Najjar either. I don't think the problem's on my end.
It doesn't appear that I'm having a problem either.
Okay, so Mr. Lee, are you able to hear me now? It's Dan Najjar.
I can hear you, Mr. Najjar.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Ryan, okay, I see my client got in. We were having a little trouble getting in, but he's on now.
Mr. Lee, are you hearing me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that seems to have resolved the problem. Thanks, Anna.
Sure, bye.
It was last minute excitement. Mr. Lee, I'm not sure if I saw the link to the real time.
I can send it to you
Oh,
again.
I think I see it here. Wait a second. No, I don't know if let me see. Real time link. Would you mind sending it to me again, sir? I don't know if where it went in my inbox. Actually, no, excuse me, Mr. Lee, I found it actually. I think I've got it here now. And I believe I'm on.
Yes, sir, you are.
Very good. Sorry about the confusion.
No problem at all.
But, coordinating to get the YouTube live stream going and to do all of this stuff, it's actually quite a lot of you need an hour before the hearing to get sure everything works seamlessly. That's what I've sort of determined at this point.
Mr. Ryan, I am in Phoenix and it's rather warm here right now. Is that all right if I don't wear my jacket?
Oh, of course, that's fine. No, not a problem. What is warm? How warm is it?
It's supposed to be 90 degrees today.
Wow. Is that unusual?
It is for this time of year.
Huh.
Mr. Ryan, did you work at the Supreme Court here in New Mexico?
I did. Yes, I was with Justice Nakamura basically for the entire time she was on the bench.
Okay, so you were there with my daughter.
Yes, I know Jen.
Okay, I was curious if that was the same person. Yeah. We just got her home last night for hopefully to ride out the duration of this thing here instead of in DC.
I see. Is she still working for the EPA?
She's working for Justice.
Justice. Okay. Yeah.
Doing a lot with water law and environmental law.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Ryan, this is Nan Winter.
Yes, how are you, Miss Winter?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Quick question. My client can watch this on the YouTube from the PRC website, correct?
That's correct. He should be able, or she should be able to click a link of some kind.
On the website.
Yeah, I'll just
Okay.
verify that that's in fact the case.
Okay, just making sure. That's what I told them. I just want to make sure I wasn't misleading them.
Click here. So yeah, if you just pull open, then you can confirm with me, because if I open it up, there's some crazy stuff happens since I'm the Zoom person. I'm controlling Zoom. So if you open the NMPRC's website, just Google that, and then you'll see on the new right at the top, then there'll be a small link. Click here to watch the hearing on live stream via YouTube.
Okay.
Can you just click that and tell me if it launches a YouTube video that then shows you our hearing?
Okay. All right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Governor Bravallo.
Yes, good afternoon.
We're just working out all the technology stuff, a few questions, so. Did it produce a YouTube video for you, Miss Winter?
I'm checking right here. Crazy. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, and then when you speak, it goes into this endless loop. If you're
Yeah.
both in the Zoom hearing and then have YouTube open, it creates this like infinity loop that becomes
Yeah.
very, very strange.
I have to tell folks to not do that.
Yeah, if they're not participating in the Zoom hearing, if they're just watching, it won't do any problems for us. It's if you're in the meeting, you can't also be on YouTube.
Correct.
So Mr. Lee, what I'm going to be seeing on my web browser is everything you've typed as you're going. Is that correct?
That is correct, and you'll have it for the rest of your life. You'll have to delete it.
Okay. So at the end of the hearing, if I wish to save a copy of this, how would I do that?
I believe it saves automatically, otherwise it'll direct you what to do.
Okay, so and then to access it again later, do I just click that link again?
I'm not entirely sure because I've never used that side of it.
Okay. Well, maybe before we hang up at the end of the hearing, I'll just do what I need to make sure I have a copy of what's been produced, and
Certainly.
we'll just figure it out.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Judge, have you had real time before?
I haven't. This is my first experience.
All right, well, these are rough notes. So if you see something, I'll have to correct it at a later time.
I understand. Yeah, no, it's really, I'm just getting to see what you do as you go, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure the court reporter's typical process is to go back and fix stuff later. So I understand entirely.
All right, thank you, Judge. Judge, are we going to have a public comment session?
There has been no request to make public comment this time. So unless that changes in the next few minutes, I'll note the fact, but then I think we'll just say no comments been received and we'll just move on.
Okey doke, thank you.
Yep. I will confirm that quickly. Yes, I've confirmed there's no one has contacted the hearing examiners to make public comments, so we'll just move through it. Wait just another minute. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 1:30 now, excuse me. My computer on my clock is not yet reset, so it's got me an hour ahead of time. In any case, it's 1:30 now. Mr. Lee, are you all set, sir?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Let me just bring up my notes here. So we are on the record now, Mr. Lee?
Yes, sir.
Great. This is the hearing for 20-00199 UT. Today is November 18th, 2020. My name is Christopher Ryan. I was appointed as hearing examiner to preside over this case. I'll take appearances from the parties at this point. Continental Divide.
Dan Najjar of Virtue Najjar, appearing on behalf of Continental Divide Electric Cooperative.
Thank you, sir. Acoma Pueblo.
Your Honor, Nan Winter and Keith Herman for Pueblo of Acoma.
Thank you very much. Staff, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hearing Examiner. John Bagatko appearing on behalf of NMPRC Utility Division staff.
Thank you very much. And the New Mexico Attorney General.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hearing Examiner. This is Gideon Elliott for the New Mexico Attorney General. And I ask that I may be excused early at the conflict.
Sorry, Mr. Elliott, I couldn't quite hear you there. The audio broke up. You need to be excused early.
I do have a conflict with another meeting.
Okay. I don't have any objection unless any other parties feel that's problematic.
No objection.
Yeah, so that's
Objection.
Thank you very much. For purpose of public comment, the hearing examiner's office received no notification that any member of the public wish to make comment. So we'll just proceed on. I received the memorandum outlining the proposed order of presentation. I just want to make sure to go through that I've correctly understood, and I think I have. So we'll have Continental Divide will go first. We'll have Mr. Robert Castillo. Then the Pueblo of Acoma will present Governor Brian Vallow and Arvine Patel. And staff will conclude with the testimony of Milo Chavez. Is that consistent with the agreement of the parties?
Yes, it is.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Before we get to the first witness, I have just a question, and I think it's actually more of a legal question, and I want to ask it now because maybe the witnesses want to speak to it. I will also say I was brought into this case not too long ago. I've read all the materials. I'm very aware that this dispute has existed for some time, many years now, and I'm sure you all have addressed all kinds of questions and answered for each other whatever you wish to know over these many years. However, I'm brand new to all of this, and so I may have questions that you all find rather simple or perhaps territory that's been well addressed in the past. So you'll just have to humor me and answer questions. And so this is one of the questions I'd like to ask now, and I'll just ask for comments. So the proposed order, which I received from Mr. Najjar today, talks at paragraphs 22 through 26 about the Pueblo's desire to see that the abandonment and transfer happens, and that that abandonment and transfer then is beneficial to the individuals residing on the Pueblo's lands who will now become the Pueblo's customers. And 22 through 26 in the proposed order talks about all the things the Pueblo has done to ensure the process goes smoothly and their tribal members are well served. And I understand these paragraphs are in the order because of the statutory standards that the commission needs to find that the transfer and abandonment would not be inconsistent with the public interest, and that the present and future public convenience and necessity do not otherwise require continuation of the service. So, but my question is this: is the Pueblo's ability to reliably meet the needs of those living within its territory and who will be served by the Pueblo after the transition something the commission needs to consider in light of the tribe's sovereign immunity? In other words, do we in the commission have authority to probe into whether or not the tribe will provide service to its tribal members in such a way? Because it seems to me on some level, if the tribe is a sovereign entity and has tribal sovereign immunity, then it can provide service to its members however it pleases. And that decision-making process is beyond the jurisdiction of the commission. I suppose alternatively, you could think of it and say, well, the transfer and abandonment hasn't happened, and the commission still needs to be satisfied since, I don't know, the tribe is appearing here and asking for a regulated entity content to provide to hand over the assets, that therefore then somehow we do need to ask the question what will happen to tribal members, how successfully the service will be provided. I don't know. And I'm just curious what the parties have to say. And maybe Mr. Najjar, if you want to start, I'll start with content to provide.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I guess I would start by saying that we didn't think to address an issue of tribal sovereignty. I would defer to Ms. Winter on that. I will tell you that this is not a case of first impression. And what I used in the order that I drafted and circulated to the other parties was a model of the transfer that occurred first between Jicarilla and Northern Rio Arriba County Electric Co-op, and subsequently another case involving the Jicarilla Nation and Jemez Mountain Electric Co-op. And so I felt that our obligation as the co-op was to address the two legal standards in statute. And I will have to defer to Ms. Winter and the Pueblo to discuss issues of sovereignty.
Yeah, and just to be very clear, I understand why you put that stuff in the order. It all makes sense to me. It was just a question I wondered. I mean, you know, does the tribe have to prove to the commission how it's going to support its own members? And that seems to me a question that really sort of begs the question as, well, what right does the commission have to ask that question? So in any case, Ms. Winter, please.
Mr. Ryan, Dan is absolutely correct. We did rely on the Jicarilla transfer. And during that hearing, which I was present at, there was substantial testimony regarding the fact that every single customer would be served. And then, you know, that nobody would be left unserved. There was no inquiry into the quality of service. As you know, the commission cannot regulate the new utility that's potentially created out of this transfer. There, you know, it is a sovereign nation. So that's not something that's not something you have any purview over or can regulate. But there was, again, pretty substantial testimony regarding the fact that every single customer would be served. And I think that is included in Mr. Patel's testimony, similar factual consideration, along with the Pueblo's substantial service for water, wastewater, and natural gas at this point. So I think if the question is quality of service, I don't think that's ever been touched on, or nor is it a consideration for you.
Okay. And Pueblo, you wanted to comment? Mr. Herman?
Mr. Ryan, are you?
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, Ms. Winter. I apologize. I forgot you, Mr. Herman, are together. That's my apology. I'm sorry, Ms. Winter.
Oh, no problem. Okay.
And okay, well, I understand the position. I think it's something I'll just to think about, perhaps do some of my own research, and I'm not interested in tinkering with the order that I've received considerably, but it's just a question that I had. And I ask it now here because I think if I ask some questions for the witnesses as we move forward, you'll understand what's going on in my mind as I ask those questions.
Mr. Ryan, I can supply you with a paragraph or two on the sovereignty of the Pueblo, if that's something you think should be included in the final order.
Well, I mean, my question is for the commissioners to ask the question, and you sort of distinguish between what is the quality of service and whether will the members be served. My question really at the end of the day is, does the commission have to concern itself with what is going to happen on tribal land, or is the commission's concern predominantly and almost singularly on whether or not Continental Divide's remaining customers will continue to have the same service, or, and I know the evidence all indicates that there will be no change to the existing Continental Divide customers. So
I'm sorry, the existing
Continental Divide customers.
content to provide customers?
Sorry, Continental. So it's the Continental Divide Electric Cooperative.
Thank you, sir. You're breaking up just a little bit. I think that's just the connection.
Okay, I'll do my best. So in any case, Continental Divide, you can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Continental Divide calls Mr. Robert E. Castillo.
Mr. Castillo, how are you?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Lee, could you please swear in the witness?
Mr. Castillo, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter of opinion should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you, sir.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Najjar.
Yes. Would you please state your name and your business address for the record?
My name is Robert Castillo. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Continental Divide Electric Cooperative. My place of business is 200 East High Street, Grants, New Mexico. I was previously employed by the New Mexico Public Utility Commission for approximately 11 years as a licensed professional engineer, serving as executive director of the agency for approximately 6 years.
Thank you. Mr. Castillo, you have before you a document which has been marked as Continental Divide CDEC Exhibit Number 1. Do you see that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is this a copy of your pre-filed direct testimony and supporting exhibits?
Yes, sir, it is.
Was Exhibit CDEC 1 prepared by you under your direct supervision?
Yes, sir, it was.
And is Exhibit CDEC-1 a true and correct copy of your direct testimony and exhibits?
Yes, sir, to the best of my knowledge.
Do you have any substantive changes to make to Exhibit CDEC-1 at this time?
No, I do not.
At this point, would you adopt Exhibit CDEC-1 as your sworn testimony here today?
Yes, sir, I will.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, before I move admission, I would like permission to ask Mr. Castillo some questions about our errata to get that information on the record.
Yes, please. I was going to ask you to if you didn't do that yourself, so go right ahead.
Mr. Castillo, are you aware that Continental Divide filed an errata in this proceeding on November 16th, 2020?
Yes, sir, I am.
Can you please state for the record what the purpose of that errata was?
It was to update the number of active service locations and members within the Acoma boundaries.
And would you provide those numbers, please, at this time, both the number of actual members of Continental Divide and the total number of meters that are within the boundaries?
Okay, CDEC, we have updated our member information and have now recently determined that as of November 13th, 2020, we serve 882 active service locations within the Pueblo's boundaries. These 882 active service locations represent a total of 793 unique members, some of whom have multiple accounts. In addition, I note that the number of customers receiving service within the boundaries of the Pueblo is unlikely to be static and could change between now and the time the transition closes, if approved by the commission. And those changes would be small, but customers do come and go on a regular basis.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. And with that, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would move the admission of Exhibit CDEC-1 into the record.
Are there any objections to the admission of the document?
No objection.
And I would make Mr. Castillo available for cross-examination by the parties and the hearing examiner.
Hearing no objection to the admission of the exhibit, it'll be admitted. I understand from the pre-hearing document that there was no planned cross-examination. Is that correct?
None from the Pueblo.
No cross-examination from staff. Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
I did have some questions for Mr. Castillo. I would like to ask, and again, Mr. Castillo, I just ask that you sort of humor me for a bit here. I'm very new to this, whereas I understand everybody else has been dealing with this for some time. But I will say, when I was in the Supreme Court, I often was very surprised to see the nature of the questions folks would ask at oral argument. The lawyers prepare for one thing and then they get questions on a totally different one. So I think I'll just proceed with my questions, and I'm sure you'll find them not challenging. So my understanding of the testimony is that abandonment and transfer will not produce a rate increase for the Continental Divide customers who remain customers after the abandonment and transfer. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir. At this point in time, we do not envision the need for a rate increase as a result of the transfer.
And that's predominantly because it's such a small percentage of Continental Divide's assets. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So are there any other adverse consequences to your members that you could imagine or anticipate as a consequence of the abandonment and transfer?
No.
Okay. Will Continental Divide in any way provide supportive services to the Pueblo as it transitions to providing electric services to its members? Well, answer that question first.
Well, in our agreement, we've agreed to support one another in emergency situations. Otherwise, each utility will operate independently.
Okay, so your Continental Divide won't be providing any maintenance services or otherwise upkeeping infrastructure that used to be its. You're just.
No, sir. We're making a clean break.
Clean break. Yeah, that's what I understood. I just wanted to make sure. Was the information you just provided when Mr. Najjar was asking you about the errata issue? There are fewer individuals that Continental Divide served within the Pueblo territory than you originally thought of. Was that as a consequence of the direct mailing that you provided? Is that how you figured that out?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Sure. So you sent out a notice to all the customers within the territory of the Pueblo that were your customers that were going to be affected by this. Mr. Najjar had asked not to have to send out a mailing. And my judgment was, well, the folks who are going to be most likely affected would be the folks Continental Divide has that are living in the Pueblo territory. So a mailing was sent out to all of them. And I'm just curious how you discovered that there was fewer customers than you anticipated.
Well, we actually keep monthly tallies of the number of customers.
Okay.
So I don't believe the notice itself caused the exodus of customers.
Or I just was wondering if that's how you discovered when you went and looked, you found out, well, there's actually fewer than we thought.
No, sir.
Okay. So I read through the materials, and if I understand, this was from the application document. It's a PDF page 231. I just note that for the record. It appears as though what's going to be transferred is, and you can just tell me if this is more or less correct. I'm just giving what I read. 123 miles of line, 610 transformers, and 270 streetlights. Does that sound about correct to you?
Yes, that's generally correct.
Okay. And again, that's for me to understand specifically what it is that's being transferred over. In the documents, I saw there was reference to something called the retained CDEC Acoma system.
Yes.
Could you explain, is that, what is the nature of that, and what is being retained, and what does that mean for you at Continental Divide?
Well, it's a very small portion of distribution lines within Acoma's boundaries that are necessary to serve some of our remaining customers outside of the boundaries. So the tribe and we agreed that we would maintain ownership of those lines so that we can reach our exterior boundary customers without having to make larger expenditures.
I see.
And of
So
course, we granted the tribe the right to take those over at any time, so long as they make us whole.
I see. I think if I read correctly too, the proposed order that I was provided indicates that CDEC will continue to provide service at specific locations within the boundaries of the Pueblo to limited customers. Could you explain that?
Well, there are very few customers. Mr. Patel probably has a better memory than I do, but there were very few that it was decided by the tribe that it would be more economical for us to serve, at least during the short term, until they're better able to develop more infrastructure.
Okay. And is that separate from the retained portion of the system? These customers you'll continue serving. That's a different thing altogether.
Yes and no. The right-of-way portion would be part of the retained system. We would still need a right-of-way to serve those customers. And so the tribe has granted us that right-of-way at no additional cost for as long as we serve those customers.
I noticed in the documents, it was your testimony, you pointed out that the Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association, that this was where the Continental Divide Electric Cooperative obtained the majority of its electric energy requirements.
That's
Do you know, will the Pueblo be joining that association?
They can better answer that. It's my understanding they will not.
Okay. Well, the Rural Utilities Service, and then this is more of a general question that you'd be educating me on the subject, but what is their participation, if any, in all of this?
Well, they have to approve we have mortgages with the RUS. That's our federal lending agency. And so they need to approve. Subsequent to PRC approval, the RUS would review and approve or disapprove the transaction based on how it would affect our mortgages with them.
So after you obtain commission authority to do this, then you'll have another layer of authority to get approval from. Is that am I understanding you correctly?
That's correct.
And the Rural Utility Service, are they involved? I mean, do they govern? It sounds like they govern both you and the Pueblo. Is that correct, or just Continental Divide?
I can only speak for us. They are our primary lender.
Okay.
They don't actually govern the co-op, but they can make a real impact on us financially.
I see. So I think initially, when I saw some of the documents, there was in the application, again, it was a PDF, and the application PDF page 99, there was an estimated number of tribal customers, and I think this was from 2010, and I think at that time the number was 687. And I'm just wondering, is that a consequence that 2010, that was the likely total number? Does that make sort of sense to you?
In 2010?
Yeah.
That was the year I joined the co-op, so I don't know what the tally was then. I know that around 2012 or 13, the tally was about 900 and some odd customers, or at least meters.
Okay. So as well in the application, I saw this was to be on PDF 231. There was a sort of pros and cons of the transfer and abandonment. It's just a very kind of basic list that was created. And it talked about rate issues as identified as part of the cost benefit analysis of the abandonment. And that document went on to point out that CDEC will, as a consequence of this, have a smaller customer base, and then fewer commercial customers. But your position is, at the end of the day, this will not affect Continental Divide's rates in any way.
Well, there will not be an immediate impact. As any utility company, the goal is to grow and get larger, therefore spreading the fixed costs amongst more people to help keep rates lower than would otherwise be.
Yeah.
So given the fact that we're giving up 800 or so customers, it will have an impact on our company, yes.
Yeah, and I think one of the commercial customers you'll lose was a casino. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's, I believe, the largest customer on tribal lands.
But in the short term, you don't expect that'll have an impact on rates.
Well,
No, I'm asking you to do predictions, I realize, yeah.
right now with our COVID experience, I believe the casino is, or what, I believe it is shut down.
Yeah, okay.
We're experiencing that impact, not only from the casino, but from other customers throughout the system.
Sure.
So yes, in the long run, it definitely will have an impact because it's a good sized load.
Okay. One of the other things I noted in the application documents, it was at PDF 231. The documents indicate, it was just a sort of vague reference to broadband service. And I'm wondering if you could comment upon that. And the reason I'm asking is I've attended several open meetings in the past few months where the question of continuing to extend broadband service has been something of real concern for the commission, for the obvious reason that the pandemic has required people to do everything from home. So will this in any way affect the ability to provide broadband service to the tribe and tribal areas or other rural parts of the state?
It won't affect our ability to serve in other parts, but our ability, I don't know how to say it, has been affected with respect to Acoma because they have not been interested in working with the cooperative regarding broadband. When we began the negotiations to resolve this matter, we offered to the tribe to be our very first broadband customers. We were just contemplating getting into the business at that time, and there was no interest in negotiating broadband. They've gone in a different direction.
Okay. And then I guess if you could just clarify for me, in the proposed order that I received, it provides that CDEC, Continental Divide Electric Cooperative, made every effort to assure that the tribal members, the individuals who will be served by the Pueblo, will continue to receive reliable service. Could you just expand upon that a little bit and just talk about what that means?
Well, I think the other part of the statement was that we have to rely on the tribe's word that they've given us, that they're perfectly capable of continuing. We're able to reassure that the transition will go smoothly and the actual physical separation, and that the members remaining with our cooperative will continue to receive reliable service. And we're relying on the word of the tribe with respect to those members who are remaining with the tribe. We cannot guarantee what kind of service they'll be getting, only the tribe can. And I can say, and I said it earlier, we have reached an agreement that we will back up Acoma in times of emergency, and they will do the same for our remaining members if and when we have an emergency.
I understand. Okay, thank you, Mr. Castillo. Those were all the questions that I had.
Thank you.
Is there any interest in asking Mr. Castillo any questions based on the questions that I've asked?
No question.
None from the Pueblo.
And none from you, Mr. Bagaco?
No questions on redirect. Thank you for offering, though, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
My pleasure. All right, I believe that's the only witness content of the divide we'll call. Excuse Mr. Castillo unless there's anything else.
We have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Castillo, you're excused as a witness, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So Pueblo of Acoma, Ms. Winter, I believe you're going to call Governor Vallow.
That's correct. Currently, Governor is not appearing on my screen in video.
Yeah, I see he may have turned his video. There he
There
is.
he is. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lee, could you just swear the witness in, please, just 1 sec.
Governor, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Governor. Governor, could you please state your name and your business address for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Brian D. Vio, and my business address is 25 Pinspotty Drive, Acoma, New Mexico, 87034.
And would you spell your first and last name for the court reporter, please?
Yes, it is Brian with an I, B-R-I-A-N. Last name is spelled V as in Victor, A-L-L-O.
Thank you. And do you have in front of you what has been marked as Pueblo of Acoma Exhibit 1?
Yes,
And that is the direct testimony of Governor Brian Vio, is that correct?
yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, and was that testimony prepared by you?
Yes,
If I were to ask you those questions today, would your answers be the same as they were on October 14th?
yes, ma'am.
And do you have, and what you have in front of you is a true and correct copy of what was filed with the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you. With that, I would offer Pueblo of Acoma Exhibit 1.
Are there any objections?
No objection.
Very good. Hearing no objection, the document will be admitted. Is there any cross-examination? I don't believe there's going to be, but I'll ask.
No cross from the Continental Divide for this witness. Thank you.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, staff does not have any cross-examination for Governor Vio, but thank you.
And Governor Vio, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name earlier. That's my fault, so my apologies. I do have just a few questions for you, Governor Vio, if you don't mind.
absolutely.
So, I mean, I know initially the reason why I asked the question of the attorneys in the hearing and at the beginning of the hearing, you know, the question about what it is that the commission should be asking as Continental Divide, you know, relinquishes this utility infrastructure over to the Pueblo. The question I want to know is, should the commission concern itself with what the Pueblo is going to be doing and how reliable a service and, you know, this kind of thing. And as I say, I know it's a legal question, but I'm just wondering, what is your opinion on the subject?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner, for the question. The Pueblo of Acoma has established and has administered and managed for some time now a utility authority. We have taken very careful steps in this process of developing our infrastructure throughout tribal lands. And this includes not only the utilities, but a number of other developments throughout the reservation. And so we have the capacity, we have the commitment of not only the tribal community, who ultimately, based on our consensus-based planning and decision-making here at the Pueblo, have supported these developments over the years. We have always strived to take full advantage of the opportunity for self-determination and to build our community, or let me say communities on the reservation, in line with not only what the federal government defines and acknowledges as sovereignty and self-determination. But even beyond that, based on the actions of the tribal council over the course of, I would say, the last 60 years, to really determine the future of our tribe. And so without any reservation, I'm very confident in the ongoing development that is happening here at the Pueblo. We have more to do, certainly, but there is a commitment, as I mentioned, of the community and of the tribal government to further develop our infrastructure and our community.
So I'll ask the next question, which one I asked Mr. Castillo, is does the tribe intend on joining the Tri-State Generation or Transmission Association?
Thank you for the question. I have to admit that I'm not familiar with the organization. Let me just say that I am serving a second term as governor. These are appointed terms. These are not elected positions at the Pueblo. We are appointed by the hierarchy of our clan system. And so I was reappointed to serve this year a second term. I do not know the details of this arrangement, and nor am I familiar with the entity that you just mentioned. So I would ask that perhaps that question be offered to Mr. Arvine Patel.
Very good, thank you. That question's been asked and answered. So I think, as I understand from the application materials, and this was at PDF 226, just for the record, the tribe intended the system to be powered and operational by January 1, 2020. And when I was assigned as the hearing examiner to this case, it was a very curtailed schedule. It's all sort of kind of a hurry up moment. So what was the delay, and then how do we find ourselves in this crunch for time now?
Thank you for the question. I would say that there are a number of factors, but I want to also state that the Pueblo of Acoma has worked very closely, as much as possible, over the course of the time that I have been here in this position, and knowing the recent history associated with the negotiations that led to the agreement, that the Pueblo has been working cooperatively through this process. Now, there have been a number of situations where the Pueblo did become concerned, also regarding the process and the continuous delays that we were experiencing as a result of just obtaining final approval by the board of the CDEC. But I want to make for sure that you know that the Pueblo of Acoma has done everything that it said it would do in this process to ensure that we would arrive at a time that we would actually be operating and administering our own electric utility.
So is there a plan at this point? I understand that the interest is to get this in front of the commission. I can't remember if it was the 9th or the 16th of December, because one of those two meetings was canceled. But in any case, is the idea to be powered and have this operational by the end of the year? Is that the idea?
What we are seeking is, the approval at one of the upcoming meetings, and so that we might initiate the operation in the beginning of 2021.
Okay. But that's mostly driven just by a desire to. There's no sort of time. There's no time-sensitive thing that it must happen. It's just that this has been going on forever, and you want it to be finally completed. Is that the idea?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's been delayed for far too long.
As I say, I've read through the record, and everyone's been doing this for much longer than I have. So, And I guess if you could can you describe, and this was touched upon in the proposed order a little bit, but what are the long-term intentions with regards to Pueblo and this? I mean, it sounds like you want to set up a utility.
Yes, absolutely. This, as I mentioned earlier, is part of a much more comprehensive effort on the part of the Pueblo to develop our infrastructure, to be self-determined in where utilities are concerned and where access and innovation in terms of energy development on the reservation are concerned. These infrastructure development projects at the Pueblo that have been multi-year projects are really fundamental to the tribe's advancement in terms of its community development, but also developing our local economy. The casino operation was mentioned earlier. When our casino was in full operation, we were one of the largest employers in Cibola County. Of course, with the onset of COVID, the pandemic, we've had to close that operation. But even in light of this situation, this public health crisis, and the fact that we are unable to operate our tribal businesses at full capacity, we remain very much committed to ensuring that the Electric Utility Authority is established and operational, and that we are continuing to engage and inform our community of these developments, as they are also anticipating additional initiatives that are really dependent upon our capacity to provide these utilities, and really, taking some planning that have been on the shelves as a result of some of these delays, and moving forward with those developments here in the coming years.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Valle. That was all the questions I had. Unless there's questions based on the questions that I've asked, I'll excuse the witness.
We have no
questions.
Very good. Mr. Valle, you're excused. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Winter, you can call your next witness.
The Pueblo calls Mr. Arvine Patel.
And Mr. Lee, if you could swear in Mr. Patel.
Mr. Patel, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to the matter now pending should be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Patel, would you please state your name and your business address?
Yes, my name is Arvine Patel. My business address is 6501 Americas Parkway Northeast, Suite 400, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87110.
Could you spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Yes, my first name is spelled Arvind. Last name Patel.
Thank you. And do you have what has been marked as Pueblo of Acoma Exhibit 2 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And that is direct testimony prepared by you?
Yes, it is.
And that was filed on October 14th of 2020?
Yes.
If I were to ask you the same questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would be.
And what you have in front of you, is that a true and correct copy of what was filed on October 14th?
Yes, it is.
With that, Mr. Examiner, I would tender the exhibit for Pueblo of Acoma, Exhibit 2.
Are there any objections to admission?
No objection.
Very good. Hearing no objection, I'll admit the exhibit. I don't believe there's going to be cross-examination. Is that correct?
No cross for Continental Divide.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, staff does not have any cross for Mr. Patel, but thank you.
Very good. Mr. Patel, I just have a few basic questions. So the question of the Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association, does the tribe intend to join that? And the reason I'm asking is because that's what Continental Divide indicated, that a majority of its power comes through there. And I'm just wondering how the tribe intends to, mean, it's infrastructure that you're getting, it's lines, it's distribution. So where is the power going to be coming from?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. To answer your question, no, the Pueblo of Acoma does not intend to join Tri-State Transmission and Generation Association. With the Commission's approval of this transfer, the Pueblo of Acoma will be forming its own tribal electric utility. With that formation, they'll be the third tribal entity in the state of New Mexico to be operating and maintaining its own retail sale of electricity. However, there are other neighboring states that have many other tribal organizations that are doing exactly the same thing for many, many years. And the Pueblo of Acoma intends to join that association, which is called the Arizona Tribal Energy Association, which has several members and, like I said, has been established for many years. To your more specific question regarding power, the Pueblo of Acoma has secured wholesale power through an alternative source, not being tri-state generation and transmission.
Okay. And I mean, is it ultimately you're going to the tribe to generate power? Is that a goal long term, or is this?
Definitely, that is a long-term goal of the Pueblo, is to explore all generation options. But in the short term, it'll be wholesale power purchase.
Okay. So then the only other question I have for you, Mr. Patel, is the proposed order I've been provided indicates that Pueblo will provide, or has done all that it can to ensure that it's going to provide electrical services at rates equal to or less than current Continental Divide electric cooperative rates. Could you just describe what was done to ensure that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Examiner. So I guess there's been many steps that the Pueblo has taken over the past several years since the settlement agreement was signed by both parties. First, starting off with due diligence, going through the necessary planning and investigative stages to ensure that the Pueblo had the information necessary to be able to make a decision whether to form an electric utility. Within that process was, the formation of business plans, looking at market availability for wholesale power, costs for service, and really to run the business with the premise in mind that when the Pueblo took over the utilities and started operation under self-determination, that the rates would not raise and they would remain the same for the new Acoma tribal members once the new utility is formed. And so that's how our utility rate billing structure is structured.
I realize it's a very, it's a broad question, which there's probably a lot you could say about it. But just at the most general level, it seems like the tribe's fairly confident that it's going to produce service at rates that are equivalent to what had existed.
Yes, sir, Mr. Examiner, that is correct.
Yeah. That was all the questions I had for Mr. Patel. So unless there's anything else, I'm happy to excuse him.
Mr. Examiner, just a follow-up question to get your question answered, if you don't mind, with Mr. Patel.
Absolutely, no, please go ahead.
Okay. I think Mr. Patel, the examiner was asking you about what Acoma had done to ensure lower rates. Did, under your watch, did the Pueblo issue requests for proposal for power?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
What other requests for proposals did you issue?
Well, requests for proposals really for wholesale power. We also explored the option of contracting operation and maintenance. So we did obtain competitive bidding for outsourcing operation and maintenance. Ultimately, though, the Pueblo did decide to perform our operation and maintenance in-house. And so we've fashioned and prepared on that front. But then also too, we did submit requests for proposals for outage and restoration support in the event of some kind of large scale outage that the Pueblo needed, again, support on. So those are the few that we did submit RFPs.
Okay. And when you issued an RFP for power supply, did you get responsive bids?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And were those rates equal to or less than the wholesale power cost of tri-state generation and transmission?
They were less.
By any particular magnitude, do you recall?
From what I recall, it was order of magnitude, just from recollection, probably about 1/3 less.
All right. Thank you. Nothing else, Mr. Examiner. I just wanted to get that to help you answer your question.
Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Winter. Unless there's anything else from Mr. Patel, I'll excuse the witness.
We have nothing else.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
And so I believe Mr. Bogacko will turn to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. We've got one witness and only one witness, and that's Mr. Milo J. Chavez, whom I would call to the stand now, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chavez. I'll have Mr. Lee swear you in.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Chavez, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give, the matter not pending, shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chavez. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I'm just fine, thank you.
Am I coming through loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. All right, we all know who you are, but would you, for the record, please state your full name?
My name is Milo J. Chavez. I am an economist with the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. We are currently at P.O. Box 1269, Santa Fe, New Mexico 87504. That is not an address you can come visit us at.
No, it is not. Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Mr. Chavez, do you recall doing some pre-filed direct testimony in this case?
Yes, I do.
And do you have something that I've provisionally marked as Staff Exhibit 1 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
I'll represent everybody at this public hearing that Staff Exhibit 1, which you all should have a copy of, is the direct testimony of Milo J. Chavez. And if you'll permit me, I'll run through the usual rigmarole with Mr. Chavez regarding his testimony. First of all, Mr. Chavez, does Staff Exhibit 1 appear to be a complete and accurate copy of the direct testimony you filed in this case on November 16th, 2020?
Yes, it does.
And as we sit here today, Mr. Chavez, do you have any substantive changes to make to your direct testimony that was filed on the 16th?
No, I do not.
And Mr. Chavez, if you were asked the same questions today that are posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers to those questions still be the same as what we see in Staff Exhibit 1?
Yes, they will.
All right, well, with that, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would move for the admission of the direct testimony of Milo J. Chavez filed on November 16th, 2020 and marked as Staff Exhibit 1 into evidence, please. Thank you.
Are there any objections to the admission?
No objection.
Very good. Hearing no objection, I'll admit the document.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. With that, I would tender Mr. Chavez for cross-examination.
Any cross-examination for Mr. Chavez?
Continental Divide has no cross-examination, Your Honor.
Pueblo of Acoma has no cross-examination.
Thank you very much. I have no questions for Mr. Chavez. So I believe we'll just excuse Mr. Chavez and thank him for his participation.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I believe that is the conclusion of the presentation of evidence. Unless there's anything else. So that would bring us to the portion where we close the record. I've received the proposed order. I presume because everyone's in agreement basically and is eager to get this all completed, there is no desire for a briefing schedule to discuss what's in the order. People probably already agree to what's in the order. Am I correct in that understanding?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would, to be clear, well, we have no desire for a briefing schedule, and I did draft that order and circulate it to all the parties. And I did receive comments back which were incorporated from the Pueblo of Acoma. I did not receive authority to represent that it was a joint proposed order. So I think it has to be treated as Continental Divide's proposed order as per the original initial order. And I can let the other parties speak for themselves as to whether they support it.
Thank you, Mr. Najjar. Yes, and that'd be very interesting. So Ms. Winter, can you speak to that?
So the draft that I saw in the last couple of days definitely included our edits and suggestions, and I appreciate Mr. Najjar being so accommodating and letting us review and comment. He did send another draft today, or maybe it was a final draft, and I haven't had a chance to review that to see if anything changed from yesterday. But assuming it's the same document we saw yesterday, I have no objection to it being a joint proposal.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, could I respond to that briefly just to clarify? The only difference between the draft that Ms. Winter saw before and Mr. Herman saw as well as Mr. Bogatko is that I corrected it to include the intervention of the Attorney General and to reflect that the Attorney General would appear at this hearing today. It still does have in yellow highlighting a reference to whether or not there's public comment, because I had no idea when I submitted it whether we would have public comment. But in all other respects, the draft that Ms. Winter.
Sorry, Mr. Najjar, you have frozen.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear somebody else. It's not me. Yes, Mr. Najjar, you broke up at the very end there. Oh, is he?
Am I back? Can you see?
You
me?
are back, yes.
I don't know, I got knocked off. I was simply saying it's identical to what Ms. Winter saw, with the exception that I have added language to reflect the intervention of the Attorney General and their appearance at this hearing.
Okay, Mr. Bogatko, any comments on your end?
Staff has reviewed Mr. Najjar's product that he circulated, and it is well done and it is accurate, and you can, I guess, understand staff to be willing to participate in it insofar as it's a joint proposed order. We believe it's accurate and good to go, and we thank Mr. Najjar for his work on that.
Okay. In that case, I suppose it's just the task is on me to review it, and it's my understanding I'll be proposing this to the commission and presenting it. Is that correct, Mr. Najjar?
Yes, yes. My understanding is that you can present this to the commission if you're so inclined, or modify it obviously to the extent you deem fit.
Yes, and I'll be consulting with my fellow hearing examiners to understand what I need to do. But I will operate under the assumption that this is a joint proposal by all parties, and this is the outcome in the writing they would like to govern here.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Hearing Officer, on behalf of Continental Divide, to the extent that your recommended decision largely reflects the substance of that proposed order, we would also waive any right to exceptions.
Ms. Winter, is that the same with you?
Same with the Pueblo Bacama, Mr. Examiner.
And Mr. Bogatko?
That is agreeable to staff, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Thank you.
Okay. So unless there's anything else anyone wishes to raise at the moment, I think we've come to the conclusion of the hearing.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, this is Hans Muller from Office of General Counsel.
Yes, Mr. Muller, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the parties be informed that it is my current intent, based upon the hearing examiner's recommended decision, that I will probably present this to the commission on December 16th, which will be the last open meeting before the end of the year. So if you just want to mark your calendars accordingly, that is when I am currently prepared to probably put this before the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Muller. Anything else from anyone else?
Nothing further from staff. Thank you all for your attendance, and thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner, for conducting this public hearing today.
Very good. Ms. Winter, you're all set?
Thank you so much.
Mr. Najjar, nothing further?
Nothing further. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, very good. So we'll go off the record now. Mr. Lee, if you wouldn't mind hanging out just for a second, so make sure I can get this. Your parties are free to leave. I'm just going to make sure I can download a copy of this real-time transcript.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. All right, so.
Thank you,
I guess
Mr. Examiner.
Yes, take
Everybody have a
care.
good day.
You as well, Mr. Patel. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Examiner.
Yes, goodbye, Mr. Vallo. Nice speaking with you.
Mr. Examiner, do you have a minute or two?
Yes, Mr. Lee, go ahead.
Is it possible for me to call Stenograph, who is the person who makes the software? And
No,
find-
you know what? So what happened is it just prompted me with a little message that says email. I think I can probably just email this to myself. Let's see what happens. And it's doing it. And I just want to keep you on the line to see how it goes. And if it just
Right, and
emails it to me.
feel free to call my cell phone at any time.
Yeah, let's see. I just hit the email button. It might take it up. Let's hear it. Caseview.net. Transcript. It comes up as a text file. And there it is. Okay,
All right.
so I guess when you hit a button, it launched a little thing that allowed me on my web browser to select an email, and then I did, and there we go.
All right, you should know that Hickory in there is going to be Hickory, like re and a.
Sure.
I don't have Hickory in my dictionary, but it should. There are some signs that are a little odd. It's kind of hard to get everything right off the bat, but it should be good to go.
Very good, Mr. Lee. Thank you very much for your help.
Bet, sir. Have a good day.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.